This isn't on our list, so please say if you want to save it to the second hour, but have you seen the plinth in Trafalgar Square?
Yeah,
hideous.
Absolutely hideous.
Why? Hideous.
It's ridiculous.
Good.
What is it? It's not a piece of art. It's people's masks that are trans, who identify as trans, and they're taking over the 4th plinth in Trafalgar Square in the capital of the UK to say what?
Taking over. I mean, it literally is a piece of art. She's an artist. You can agree or disagree whether it's good art, but it is art.
Well, that's art, isn't it? It's very subjective.
Right, of course. And that's completely fine. We can have a debate about whether art is good or not.
Why do we need a great lump of pointless art about trans people? Why does Trafalgar Square need to have that on?
Andrew, I think that's quite offensive to say it's pointless when he's commemorating people from the cursory look at the story who have been, I think it's been people who've been killed, isn't it?
They're not dead.
No, they're not dead.
They're not dead.
No.
They had their faces...
I thought it was memorial.
The type of art is a Mexican style of memorial. So in Mexico, that's sort of art. They would use reels, they would use death masks. Yeah. And also sometimes real skulls, OK? So that's sort of the Mexican element of it. Again, why are we not celebrating British art and a British way of portraying art? But also... the conversations you have to have, Claire, with your kids about the trans and the non-binary issues. I'm having it forced down my throat again.
Well, you are, and it's such a small proportion of society, which is not representative. Art is there for everybody. Art is there to educate. Art, as I said, is very subjective. Some people love it, some people hate it. Certain pieces of art. Anthony Gormley's statue of the Angel of the North. Beautiful, wonderful, we know exactly what it does. But this is... why aren't people saying it's culturally appropriation, which it is, because it's using Mexican style of death mask, and then to use the trans lobby of virtue signalling again, getting things down our throats constantly. I'm sorry, the debate is we shouldn't be having it.
I honestly don't know why...
Such an important part of our cultural life is Trafalgar Square.
Yes.
So why do we need this obscure piece of artwork?
I think it's interesting when you have people's sort of faces carved into the side of a kind of container-like.
But you can't see them from the ground.
Look, it's if it gets people talking, that is one of the
about what? Normalising psychological dysfunction around gender.
Bev, we can talk about art or we can talk about trans rights. It's sometimes difficult to talk about
It's not trans rights. It's not trans rights. It's normalising psychological dysfunction.
When you talk about normalising, that's also really, really problematic and dangerous because these trans people have always existed. You can disagree about whether people can change gender, but trans people have always existed.
I agree.
And it's completely fine and legitimate to talk about trans people, to put trans people in art.
But it was always.
And trans people are also British. Some British people are trans. Trafalgar Square is the centre of our capital. It's not going to be there forever. It's completely fine to have them for a limited amount of time to get people talking, to get people looking at art, thinking, do I like this art? Do I not like this art? Why don't I like it? Why do I like it? What is it trying to convey?
But the thing is, I'll tell you, Jonathan, if people actually turn round, as we have done, and said, we don't like that piece of art, we will be branded transphobic.
Yeah.
You've just said it was offensive. I
said it's offensive from the language. I thought... it was because I hadn't read the story, because I didn't know we were talking about it right now. I thought they were dead and it was memorialising them. So that's why I thought it was offensive.
But even still, even if they are dead, so what?
Well, I mean...
why do we have to have a massive piece of art which is all about...
pointless.
It is about normalising the concept that you are not male and you are not female. And the non-binary issue is what the trans issue... It's always about the fact that, well, this... it's normalising. I've got no other word than that.
Why is
it shouldn't be normal.
But that's a separate conversation from the art, because what you're saying is it's not normal. Whereas I'm just saying non-binary people have always existed. People who don't conform to gender, who don't feel like they conform to gender, people who have been trans, as you just acknowledged, have existed forever. So why is it not normal?
London is one of the great cities on the planet.
Right.
Why don't we have something on that?
And we also have a huge LGBT diversity, as you well know.
Why can't we have something that reflects London cultural life?
Well, I mean, look, now you're talking about multiculturalism. London is not only a massive centre of LGBT life, it's also a hugely multicultural city. And, of course, it's legitimate to talk about different cultures and to have different cultures. I mean, the British Museum is literally a world museum.
Less than 1%?
Less than 1%, 0.1 or between 0.1 and 0.2.
Yeah.
So how is that reflective?
Getting bigger every day.
How is that reflective?
Because children are being...
Because you're allowed
children are being influenced
it's not
by
every single monument. It's not about trans people,
Andrew.
This is the worst sort of
virtue signalling by the Mayor of London.
Thank you, and that's exactly what I said at the beginning.
What is the virtue that is being signalled?
This will tick a box. Look at me, Sadiq Khan. I'm so trendy and with it.
I think it's, look, I'll have
Surprised
to...
they didn't have the masks on bikes, actually.
I want to go and look at... I will look. Angie, I love art. I love public art. I will go to this exhibit. I'll look at it. I'll see what I think about it from an artistic perspective, an aesthetic perspective, and then I'll look into the politics of it as well.
We'll look forward to that.
We're literally talking about it. I'm saying I can't comment on it before I've really seen it.
Well, we've shown you a photograph of it. It's hideous.
About it.
It's hideous.
Andrew, that's a bit mean. Well,
no, it's not me. It's just ridiculous. I mean, how can you expect me to comment on it? I haven't seen the artwork in person.
I did say we can talk about it. You did a good job. Talking about offensive and uncomfortable, Claire, apparently there's a pupil at a school in Scotland that's allowed to identify as a wolf.
A what?
A wolf.
Oh.
And Professor Tommy Mackay, who's one of the leading neuropsychologists in Scotland, has said there is no such body dysmorphia thing that this child could actually have in order to identify this.
Animal dysphoria.
Is a furry.
Species dysphoria.
Are there any wolves in Scotland?
There might very
he's in
well
5G.
Be. There might very well be, but he might have maybe read some Harry Potter, or she. I don't know the sex of the child, and in fact, the local authority's been kept quiet. It was mentioned that Aberdeen, there's a school in Aberdeenshire, but I don't know if that is still the one. My sister's a teacher in Scotland, right, in a very special needs school, and she said the amount of enabling social workers that actually say we need to get them a furry outfit to wear because they're identifying as a cat or a dog, and I'm sorry.
The world's gone mad.
It has gone completely mad, but psychologically, from one of the leading psychologists, educational psychologists in Scotland, has said there is no such
Children should not
dysphoria.
be indulged like this.
They should not be indulged. He actually used the word snap out of it and common sense, which is wonderful.
Snap. He's a wolf. He can snap at everything.
You can bite it. I mean, that's even. But you need. I think there's a safeguarding issue here. Not only a safeguarding issue for the child that presents himself or herself as a wolf, but also for the other kids in the class. What's that message sending out?
Right, Jonathan.
How does the teacher address this child?
I don't really know why we're talking about this on national television. This is something
because it's a real thing.
Bev,
it is so common.
Perfectly well why we're talking about this, because this is an attempt by people who viciously hate trans people to put a story about that makes it look ridiculous, makes the idea of identifying about as something that you're not, makes so ridiculous and preposterous and obscene that obviously no one could ever believe that it could take place.
Identifying
so
as an animal with
should obviously not indulge such stupidity.
That is why we're talking about it. It's
the equivalent of what happened in 20 years ago. It's the equivalent of what happened 20 years ago when I was told, well, if two men can marry, then why not two dogs, as one MEP once said to me in Brussels. This is the kind of level of discourse. This is something that's happening in a school.
It's not. For a start, there is not one person here that hates trans people, so I want to pull you up on that. There's not one person at this table who hates trans people.
I'm saying the agenda behind this kind of story is transphobic.
No, the agenda... Go on.
I'll tell you something, Jonathan. If there was a debate on a trans issue and one of the stations brought in someone who identified as a furry, the trans person would be up in arms. This is not about transgender.
But the reason we're talking about it...
No, it's not. It's not. The reason we're talking about it is because children are being indulged. Children have fallen down a horrible rabbit hole. They might want to identify as one of those when they're down there as well.
He's a wolf. He loves rabbit holes.
It's about safeguarding children. It's about getting the status quo back up and running and giving children parameters within the common good.
The thing is that we don't know the precise circumstance of what's happening this
I don't need to know.
That's the problem. We don't know if this child has other special needs or educational needs or whatever it might be.
Irrelevant.
I would doubt it because Professor Tommy Mackay is head of autism and is I'm so pleased to be able to quote him. So there's nothing neurodiverse about this. And he said it.
Well, he also, in that quote that I read, was basically, it seemed to be a kind of an anti-trans position, subliminally, and he was saying that children can't identify as things that they're not. We need to sort of call
You can't possibly know what's going on in his head subliminally. Jonathan, if you were 12 years old and you said to your mum and dad, I think I'm a wolf, what would they have said?
Well, obviously, I'm not the child in question.
Yes, but this point is parenting. It's parenting.
Look,
what would they have said?
Look, Bev, there might be some circumstances circumstances where, and we don't know what's happening in school, none of us knows who this child is or where the school is, but what
we don't need to know.
The child, in some circumstances, you can say, this is clearly a child making it up for attention or whatever. And there are other cases where you kind of think we need to treat this child with sensitivity and respect and work around it.
And warn them when it's a full moon.
That's what I was just about to say.
What a nightmare for the teacher.
What about nightmare for the other children in the class
we
as well?
We have no evidence about whether other children in this class are disturbed by it or offended or funny or anything.
I can give you a real world. I can give you a real world example of this. I've got a friend, and in their son's class there are 2 kids who identify as furries. This is in Devon, in a sleepy little town in Devon. And that child was upset at night, my friend's child, saying, I told X that he's not actually a dog. And he got in trouble for saying to the child, you're not really a dog. And he was upset at night because the teacher had told him off. And his mum was saying to him, you know what, we have to be kind, we have to accept everybody. And I took him to one side and I went, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
I had a word with his mum and I said, you don't need to say you have to accept. You need to empower him to call out absolute balderdash, which is what it is.
The point is that people are not growing up. We do not have adults in this country, in the main, as far as I believe, who actually believe that they are dogs or cats, or who actually believe that they are, they might be doing it for kink or as kind of role play.
Kink, thank you. It's a sex thing.
No,
it is.
There are some people.
There are
some people, but that's not what we're talking about right now. There are circumstances in which people do that.
I can't believe you're defending this nonsense.
I'm saying.
I love the fact that you are, Jonathan.
Saying this is not an appropriate conversation to be having on TV
we censor it, do we?
because we don't know what is actually, because we are getting this third hand and we're turning it into a bigger conversation. We don't know the identity of the child or what's going on.
Well, the identity of the child clearly is a wolf.
The trouble is, Jonathan, that sort of laissez-faire, blasé attitude to this is what has got us into the situation where there are furries in every school across the country.
It's not laissez-faire, Bev.
It
might do more harm than good to tell this child. And again, I don't know what the circumstances are.
To tell the child you're not a wolf? That's going to
it may do more harm than good to kind of fight back against children when they say they are something that you don't think they are. It often does more harm than good.
If it was your nephew or niece, would you not say you're not a wolf?
It's my nephew and niece and not this child.
I don't mean to be flippant.
They have different needs.
But I don't mean to be flippant. However, what about the toilet breaks? What's going to happen if you're a wolf? Go out and do it in a tree. I mean, that's the extension from where you're sitting, Jonathan.
Yeah. Do they sit at a
really
desk?
is.
Do they sit on a chair?
It's just too much. It's too much.
It's pathetic that the schools allowed it.
And social services.
I think it's really silly for us to be talking about an individual policy in one school with one teacher and one child, but we have no idea who they are. Why?
I've given you a real-life example.
Of course we can discuss things, but we're discussing it without knowing about the circumstances.
There can be no circumstance.
We're extrapolating certain things.
There are no mitigating circumstances in which that child should be told, yes, you're a wolf, don't bite me.
What if it's considered, for example, that the child would be at risk of harm if these are safety assessments that are drawn up.
Take the child to a mirror and look in the mirror and see what you see. They will not see a wolf.
Jonathan, Claire, that has just been marvellous and mind-expanding.
I can just imagine the messages coming in.
Yeah, they'll be howling.
Yeah, howling. We're not taking it seriously, Jonathan, because it's
I can see that.
It is ridiculous.